Well, hopefully this will be a warning for them all. Let's begin. Now, yeah, of course I don't know about you, but personally, it just seems like there's never a day goes by where eco-groups like Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion just seem to love to pee us all off, don't they? I mean, whether it's Just Stop Oil peeing orange paint up buildings or whatever, causing damage, which, let's face it, costs us taxpayers a mountain of cash to sort out, it always seems, or Extinction Rebellion or whatever other groups just sitting on their bums in the middle of the road, possibly blocking things like ambulances or whatever else from getting through. But no, it just seems like one of their leaders, Greta Thunberg, let's just say got herself in a little bit of bother because she's been nicked and hopefully will be banged up for a while. And unfortunately, that never just seems to be the case nowadays, does it? But what's happened then? Well, according to this article, it says climate activist Greta Thunberg has been detained by the police in the Netherlands. The 21-year-old, it says, was among dozens of people held after protesters partially blocked a road in The Hague. Now, there seems to be a clear difference, doesn't there? They seem to nick them over there, whereas we just seem to make them nothing but cups of tea and just say, how are you doing? And unfortunately for people like Greta, she has just found that out. It says, after she was released though, Miss Thunberg quickly rejoined a small group of demonstrators who were blocking a different road leading to a railway station, so it just doesn't seem that she's learning her lesson, does it? You'd like to think, wouldn't you, that police should take these things into account and therefore actually give these people a proper sentence if they are blocking things like ambulances or whatever else from getting through. And, don't get me wrong, people obviously do have a right to protest, and I'm not trying to say they don't. I'm trying to say that while she does have that right, it should be a peaceful protest, and therefore she shouldn't be doing things like peeing off the public just to get her point across, and that goes for all of them, not just Greta. But get this, because it also says she was detained a second time and driven off in a police van. And Miss Thunberg told journalists that she was actually protesting because the world was facing a, wait for this, existential crisis. Well, hopefully, she might be, let's just say, a little bit happier by 2035 when, at the moment, the government are hoping to ban all new petrol and diesel cars, but to be honest with you, I don't think she'll be even happy then, will she? And she also said that we are in a planetary emergency and we are not going to stand by and let people lose their lives and livelihoods and be forced to become climate refugees when we can all do something. And what are you doing, Greta, just sitting on your bum? And in fact, what she's not realising is while she's stopping all the traffic or whatever else, they are surely using more oil, aren't they? So you can't really think about that, Greta, because at the end of the day, those harmful fumes that these people just love to seem to moan about are continuing to go up into the atmosphere whilst they're blocking traffic. And let's face it, a lot less of those fumes would have happened had they not been there. But of course, they never like to seem to realise that, do they? And apparently the Extinction Rebellion group said before the demonstration that activists would block a main road into The Hague, but a heavily policed presence, including officers on horseback, initially prevented the activists from getting onto the road. Well, that is good, isn't it? At least the police in the Netherlands seem to be on the ball. It's just a pity that in most cases our police aren't. And let's face it, do seem to love to stand by whilst protesters do things like throw statues in the water or cause damage to buildings or whatever. I mean, that is obviously not the case for all of them, I'm sure, but quite a worrying amount, in my opinion, do just love to stand by and watch, when in fact I think they should actually be doing their jobs, and hopefully then that will send a message to say, no, you can't act like a bellend. But just what were they protesting about? Is it the usual crap? Well, apparently it says the demonstrators were protesting against Dutch subsidies and tax breaks to companies linked to fossil fuel industries. Which surely means an unusual move. They're not actually protesting about the petrol themselves. No doubt, of course, because quite a lot of people, including me, sometimes point out that quite often these people get to their protests in diesel vans, which I'm sure they just probably don't want us to know, eh? Anyway, it goes on and says, Extinction Rebellion activists have blocked the road that runs past the temporary home of the Dutch Parliament more than 30 times to protest against the subsidies. And in February, apparently, Miss Thunberg was acquitted by a London court because apparently she was refusing to follow a police order to leave the protest and was blocking the entrance to a major oil and gas industry conference last year. Well, surely if she was causing a nuisance and ignoring police orders, then that more than likely would be seen as a public order offence. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that's probably what that was all about. So it does seem strange that the court in this case have taken Greta Thunberg's side against the police, and it just goes to show, doesn't it, that the more that this stuff happens where these people get let off for not following police orders and things like that, if they're actually causing a disturbance, then the more they're going to do it. And then actually, in fact, the more they will do it, it'll escalate, surely, wouldn't it? And let's face it, not only that, but they'll surely think they're above the law. I mean, hopefully that is not the case, but the mere fact that she's continuing to do this, especially after she got nicked, presumably earlier on that day, and then attended another protest, thereby presumably causing enough of a nuisance to get arrested again. It just goes to prove my point, doesn't it? But anyway, her activism has apparently inspired a global youth movement, it says, demanding stronger efforts to fight climate change since she began staging weekly protests outside the Swedish Parliament starting in 2018. And she has been repeatedly fined in Sweden and the UK for civil obedience in connection with the protests. And, you know, don't get me wrong. As I said, people are entitled to protest. However, she's got quite a large following, hasn't she? And therefore, if she's going to get let off, this is just going to cause more and more people to presumably follow her and the things she's doing, or maybe do worse things so they get her attention on social media, maybe. I mean, I hope that is not the case, but it does seem like a very slippery slope, especially if they're just allowed to get away with things. I mean, that could, let's face it, be a big problem for us all, I'm sure.